This is part two, and I'm talking about my experience as a world peace clown, what's led me on my journey to peace. I studied at La Trobe University in Melbourne, here in Australia, and it was at La Trobe that I particularly became acquainted with Gandhi's work. What particularly was of interest to me was what he coined Satyagraha or Satyagraha. I can't quite say it the way the Indians say it. They have the most beautiful way of pronouncing it. But Satya is truth, and Graha is holding on to truth. So we're holding on to truth, would be the rough translation. And Ahimsa, which translates into non-violence or love. And for me personally, as a world peace clown, I resonate with love and truth. I find them to be the pillars of who we are. So at La Trobe, I studied Gandhi. I also was having dreams where I actually had a dream where Gandhi came to me, and it was very brief, it was very dark, and he was walking like on the Long March. In his history, he did a long march to Dandi to pick up salt, and that was a way of expressing to the Indian people that they could be independent. Anyway, he came to me in a dream, and I saw the long stick as if he was going on the long march. And he looked at me, and I felt in the dream lower than my feet. It was very dark, but the feeling was humility that I felt, and I'd been seen. And then the dream was finished. Now the dream has been quite deeply embedded for me. It felt like it was real, and I've always felt this strong connection to the words, you can be the change you wish to see in the world. And I found out when I did subsequently go to India that Gandhi didn't actually say those words exactly, but that was definitely the sentiment of his life. So I studied Gandhi, and I also studied mediation in the law faculty. Now that was interesting because I'd never been trained in conflict resolution. And essentially conflict resolution is that we can all solve our problems. So rather than getting bogged down with conflict in your family, with your partner, with your children, with your government, we can actually sit down, and I can say, for example, if I'm not happy with you, I can say, I am feeling really upset, and what I would like is you not to talk to me like that, and perhaps we can work out a different way of communicating together. Or, what you're doing is you're holding or owning your own power, and you're communicating in a way that's not blaming someone else. You're actually taking responsibility for how you feel rather than projecting it. And what we often find in violence these days is, in all cases, people are projecting their vision of the other, and they often, if not always, demonize that other. They might call them a terrorist, or they might call them a criminal. Or you often read in newspapers, you can read very carefully the language that's used to make the other somehow wrong. What we don't see in the media in particular is a conflict resolution approach to writing, where we might say, this party said this and this party said that. And maybe as a journalist, they could say, and what would you think could solve this problem? Rather than what we do see quite frequently across the world in the media is the media taking a viewpoint, and quite often there's politics behind that. So going back to La Trobe University, I learned conflict resolution, and I came to see that there's no reason why we should have violence in the world, that we can solve our own problems when we have a willingness to resolve underlying conflict. And what I've realised is that we haven't had that will to resolve conflict. In fact, there has been political reasons why conflicts have been promulgated in the world. So that was some of the thinking, some of the thought processes I went through at La Trobe, really thinking deeply, what is peace? Is it really the cessation of violence? That means the stopping of violence? Or is it a deeper thing where there's peace within self? Certainly Gandhi talked about, he called truth as God, or God as truth. So for him, what is truth? What is true? And he himself was trained as a barrister. And eventually, after his 20 years in South Africa, where he challenged the South African government in respect of equality for Indians and South Africans, he came back to India with a deeper knowledge of non-violent resistance, and he realised that truth was the cornerstone of that. So speaking truthfully,